Alright guys, so I finally checked out one of my most anticipated movies of the year. That is Kingsman, The Golden Circle, in IMAX. Straight off the bat, I love the first Kingsman. I think it's one of the best movies of that year, and quite possibly the best action movie that came out in 2015. I just love it so much. Of course, I own it. And instantly, I was just excited for The Golden Circle. So obviously the Kingsmen are back, and of course they're facing against I guess what they were trying to go is for a much bigger threat of a villain in this movie than in the first movie. We'll get into the villain in a second, but basically this villain, who is played by Julianne Moore, she puts like this thing on drugs, which like once someone does that drug, they get a thing called the blue rash, which of course could lead them to their death. And a lot of people in this movie apparently use drugs, so like millions of people get the blue rash. And of course the Kingsmen are trying to, of course, stop Julianne Moore from doing this. And then not only that, but basically the whole Kingsman headquarters got blown up by Julianne Moore. So that's another reason why the remaining of the Kingsmen who survived the explosion, that's why they want to go after them. And of course they team up with the American Kingsmen, the Statesmen. Again, I was anticipating this movie. It did not disappoint. Everyone who was brought back to this movie from the first movie, Taron Egerton, Mark Strong as Merlin, they're all good. They're all good in their roles. I'm glad they're back. But not only that, but we get, of course, new additions to this cast with, of course, the Statesmen. And those new additions being Jeff Bridges, Pedro Pascal, and Channing Tatum, which are my favorite new additions to this movie. Of course, we have other new additions such as the villain Julianne Moore, and we'll get into his role in a second for Elton John, but yes, he's in this movie as well. And of course, we get Halle Berry, who is basically the female version of Mark Strong's Merlin. And this is the very best I've seen her in a long time. Recently, she's been in such crap. I mean, look at Kidnap. That movie was fucking dumb, and this is the best I've seen her in a long time. I'm gonna say the best since probably Days of Future Past back in 2015. And just being quite honest, Julianne Moore as the villain might just be my least favorite addition to this movie, mainly because her as the villain is okay. I think she's good in this role, but just that her character, I wasn't a big fan of her character. It's for a villain for a Kingsman movie, it's a huge step down from the villain of the first movie, who was Samuel L. Jackson. And I really like Samuel L. Jackson in the first movie because his character was kind of over the top, but he actually, I've kind of found him more threatening in the first movie than I found Julianne Moore here. Of course, Julianne Moore is also kind of a over the top villain, but I just wasn't a huge fan of her character. And this sequel is a little bit more cheesy and a little bit more energetic than the first movie. It does crank up the energy from a 7, which was the first movie's level of energy, all the way to 100, which is the level of energy that this movie has. Every action scene was so much fun and very engaging to watch. The action scenes in this movie get very, very ridiculous, but that's the charm to this movie, of how ridiculous it actually gets. The charm to the first movie of how ridiculous it got, I mean, of course, it was the last act where everyone's heads just started to explode when they had that chip inserted of them inside them, and their heads just started to explode with like rainbow-like colors. And yes, that scene was ridiculous in the first movie, but that was what made the first movie. The ridiculous action scenes, for example, Eggsy and Harry kicking ass to Elton John song in the background. It's very ridiculous. It's so much fun. That's the charm to this movie. And talking about Elton John, when I first heard that he was going to have a role in this movie, I didn't know exactly what type of role. I thought he was going to be a Kingsman or something. But he just plays himself. He plays Elton John, and he's kidnapped by Julianne Moore. He has a very fun role. A lot of people are complaining that his role was unnecessary. And I was nervous, going into this movie, I was nervous that they were really just going to waste Elton John. In my opinion, they really took advantage of him. Hell, he even has his own action scene where he's kicking ass in his feather suit. That's fucking awesome right there. Now, the whole thing about bringing Harry back, at first I was hesitant about it because I just think if you're going to kill off character just leave him dead. But I'm kind of glad he's back, and the reason for why he's actually alive, again, it gets to the point where it's kind of ridiculous, and it almost sounds like an excuse. But for Kingsman, it really, really works. I also forgot to talk about the opening to this movie. You know, the beginning. This movie instantly hooks you on. It starts with an action scene that's so much fun to watch, and I'm just glad that it started out with so much energy, and yet it also ended with so much energy. Mainly, again, my problems are how ridiculous this movie could get. Sometimes, yes, it gets to a level of pretty dumb action, but I still kind of like that. It's Kingsman, so of course, and not only that, but the villain, of course, Julianne Moore. I thought she was good in the role, but again, her character, the way her character is written, I just wasn't a big fan. I still think that the villain from the first movie is a much better villain. Hopefully, in the third movie, we could get a step up in the villain and why they're actually doing what they're doing for a villain. But other than that, I ate this movie up. I love this movie, Kingsman: The Golden Circle. I still like the first one better, but this movie is still so damn good. I do recommend paying full price to watch this movie, and I'm gonna give Kingsman: The Golden Circle an A minus. Even though yes, I love this movie, I do prefer the first movie just a little bit more. And yes, I'm glad I saw this movie in IMAX. It actually expands ratios to like a regular ratio to like a full screen ratio where it covers the whole IMAX screen. And it felt like I was watching the movie out of a window. It was just such an amazing experience. But anyways, have you guys seen Kingsman: The Golden Circle? Have you guys seen it? What did you guys think about it? Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later for my next movie day.